Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Identity and Impact. Today's conversation explores a question that many professionals eventually ask themselves: what comes after success? Many of us spend years building careers. We pursue opportunities, we chase promotions, we develop expertise, we achieve goals. But eventually, a different question emerges. How do we use our experience, our influence, and success to create impact beyond ourselves? Today's guest is someone whose journey reflects that evolution beautifully, someone I worked for in the past. We first crossed paths years ago in the world of HR and shared services. Since then, he has built an international career, worked across multiple leadership roles, transitioned to independent consulting, built a wonderful life with his partner husband, and dedicated time and energy to helping underserved communities in the UK or in the Philippines, and also a number of trustee and volunteer roles. But what makes his story especially interesting is that it spans multiple cultures, communities, and causes. So, friends, let's welcome Iwan Roberts-Mok. Hi, Iwan. Nice to have you again.
That's a very touching intro, so thank you so much. And it's lovely to speak to you again.
Of course, well-deserved, beautiful introduction. So before we get into leadership, purpose, and service, let's start somewhere personal, Iwan, and I hope you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay, so how are you? What does life look like these days?
Yeah, like life's good. So what we are still like massively into our travel. We've enjoyed seeing the world. I actually just hit my 101st country this year, which,
Oh, wow.
if you remember back in the day when we worked together, it was always my mission to hit 100. Obviously, COVID slowed that down a little bit, but yeah, was really happy to do that. And I just love different cultures and different lives and seeing the world. So that's been a really big part. And yeah, work-wise is good. So as you mentioned, like moved into the independent consultancy side after so many years in corporate life. And I think for me, it's definitely changed the dynamics of how I think and feel. I'm sure you remember, absolutely used to be addicted to work, and it was my absolute definition of me. And that's definitely in an evolution now, not totally perfect, but definitely on the right path to kind of changing how I see. So yes, things are good, and yeah, I'm definitely trying to balance life a little bit better than I ever used to.
Absolutely. And I love to hear that you are on track to completing visits on all countries of the world. And then you're now more than 100 plus. So
There's
that's
a
lovely
lot
to
more
hear.
to go.
uh, but how's your husband partner, and what are you enjoying most about this chapter of your life?
Yeah, I mean, things are good. So Anson's just actually started a new job in the last couple of weeks,
Okay.
working at an animal rescue centre, where they rescue dogs from Eastern Europe. It is 100% his love and passion. Slightly worried we're going to have a house full of like 25 dogs in about a month's time, but it's great to see him doing something that he's so passionate about. But it's good. Like, I can't believe we've been married almost 4 years, and like I've been together for almost six, I think now. So like time flies. It's like we spend quite a bit of time going back to Hong Kong, which is where his family is and things like that. But yeah, all good, and I'm so happy he's doing something that he's really passionate about.
Yeah, and it's lovely to see your pictures traveling together. So
Yeah, exactly.
it,
Always a Hong Kong stop off and then on to somewhere else.
yes.
That tends to be our vibe.
Every time I see your pictures, it brings smile to me. So that's great. So one thing, and you've already mentioned this, and one thing I've noticed is that as people becomes more experienced, their definition of success often changes. Has that happened to you?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and it's probably quite recent, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, always work has been a defining part of my life.
Okay.
I've always chased that next promotion or that next big role, that next big brand to work for. And particularly, I'm really proud of like the work that I did at Facebook. Facebook was a tough gig, but it was
Mm-hmm.
so rewarding. But again, that kind of high performance environment does push you to want more and more and more. So
Mm-hmm.
you're really happy with your performance rating, but actually, why didn't I get more? And that drives a certain behavior, whether it's kind of imposter syndrome or how you perceive yourself not
Yes.
being good at what you do, even though you've got a fantastic rating, fantastic bonus,
Mm-hmm.
fantastic shares, it's still not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does drive you in a negative way to see about how you are contributing to the world. So my last corporate role, an organisation called Entain, after I left that, I like had a couple of months out, and I was actually planning to take longer, but it didn't really transpire like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a couple of months just reflecting on actually where do I get my energy and passion? And a lot of that did come from some of the non-exec and trustee roles that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I find so much value in all the brilliant experience. I'm so lucky for the companies that I've worked for. I just feel now that I want to share that experience, like the good, the bad, and the challenging, back to some of these smaller organizations or smaller charities, or like, I volunteered to go into custody suites to kind of check on the welfare of detainees. And I love that. And I guess it's always been part of my career to make things better and things like that. But for me now, that's success where I can still have obviously income and I need that to be able to live and support family. But at the same time, how I give back, it's not necessarily just time, but it's my kind of expertise and what I can do. I find that just so much more rewarding. And you get that balance between, what you give back and what you actually do professionally and earn. Like if you can get that balance right, I just think it's so much more kind of fulfilling, if you like. I do have a tendency to say yes to everything, so I'm definitely getting better at kind of managing that time and being really honest with people that I can't say yes to everything,
You can
but it's
only offer
definitely
so
not.
much.
No, exactly, because you then don't give all you can because you're so overloaded. So
Yeah.
getting that balance right, I think, is really important. But that for me feels so much more rewarding than that 100% corporate life. That, I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it at the time, but it definitely makes you think about your contribution to the world, right?
Oh, that's interesting, and that's lovely to hear that for you, success now is not just about success in the corporate world and professionally. You're actually now trying to redefine success by also giving back, and I envy you. I hope to have more time to do so also, hopefully soon. Anyhow, Yuan, as I've said, one of the reasons I created Identity and Impact, this digital platform, is because I believe leadership begins with identity. And that before we understand our impact, we first need to understand ourselves. How would you describe your identity today? Not your profession, not your title. Who is Yuan?
I mean, this is a very tough question, and I think if you asked me this probably a few years ago, it'd be like work, this, that, work, bit more work, bit more
Mm-hmm.
work. But if I reflect on like that kind of professional stuff, but also like my core values, I think it is about like making things better. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that sounds really cheesy, but
Mm-hmm.
if I think about the stuff that I do in like my personal life and the
Mm-hmm.
care that I put into like custody visits or the charities that I support
Mm-hmm.
or the work that I do, that comes down to like making things better for people, whether that's an
Mm-hmm.
organization, for
Mm-hmm.
people, for friends, for
Mm-hmm.
family. That almost comes down to that is what I get so much energy about, and whether it is professional or personal. That's how I kind of explain it, really. It is about making things better for people. And it's probably as simple as that from an identity point of view.
No, it's great. I actually, while you're speaking, I just imagined a great tagline. It says, "You won, the go-to to make things better."
Exactly. Like I don't always get it right, but at least I give it 100% to do it. And I think it's that almost like universal human rights thing. Like I'm just so passionate about that. But that essentially is making things better for people. And that's kind of definitely what drives me lately.
Yeah, that's great. And I see that. I've seen that when we were working together. I see that more now, or at least feeling that more now as you tell your story. Shifting gears, so one thing that makes your story particularly interesting is that your roots span multiple cultures. So can you tell us a little about your upbringing and how has that influenced who you are today?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you can probably tell by the accent, like I grew up in the north in a very, very small village called Orton in
Mm-hmm.
West Lancashire, so about
Mm-hmm.
25 miles in between Liverpool and Manchester, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Both my parents were in the medical profession. So
Mm-hmm.
my dad is still a doctor, and my mum was a nurse tutor and did an awful lot of work in with the World Health Organization when I was first born. So worked out in Libya. So like that was kind of my upbringing, incredibly close to my mum
Mm-hmm.
and my mum's parents. I went to a extremely religious school, which did everything possible for you not to be yourself
Mm-hmm.
and to follow the absolute scriptures to the letter.
Mm-hmm.
So being obviously part of the LGBT community and knowing that quite early on in my life, it was a struggle to be yourself, and that wasn't how people that individuality wasn't what was driven. Like we had uniform checks every day. Well, hymn books had to be in a perfect order. It was that absolute unity
Mm-hmm.
and not being yourself was almost the motto of my schooling, really. So after that, we travelled quite a lot as children. Like went to South Africa a lot. Like my mum's family were out there,
Mm-hmm.
and like I have very vivid recollections of going to South Africa during the apartheid and seeing the absolute injustice
Mm-hmm.
of that part of the world. And I always remember my mum always used to say this, like the sheer volume of questions I had about I don't understand why this is happening here. Why? And I guess like for me that really has always stuck with me as when we used to go back to South Africa to see family, like that whole apartheid thing just I just could not comprehend what was happening. And I think for me, that's probably shaped a lot of my thoughts now in terms of how I see the world and what I want to contribute to. But yeah, like, and then obviously when I hit 18, I was out of a small village and moved up to York, but then ultimately to Manchester, which I always say Manchester is like my adopted city. It feels probably the closest to home. Weirdly, outside of Manila, that it feels very much like home when I go back.
Okay. And thank you for sharing that. So obviously like deeper connection to other culture. You've also you've mentioned Manila. I know you've worked across the world. Can you expound more how those things shape your perspective on diversity, belonging, and inclusion?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I mentioned at the start, like my passion for travel has always been there. I remember having a conversation with one of the Facebook leaders when we were in Israel, actually, doing a visit. And I always remember saying that every country I visited, I've learned something different about a culture
Mm-hmm.
or ways of life, how people see the world, whether it's kind of religion or whatever. And I think for me, I've been so lucky to work in so many different countries, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be India, whether it be in Hong Kong, or whether it be in the Philippines. Like all of those bits help me think differently and change maybe some of my preconceptions or how things are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think experiencing just different parts of the world, whether that's living, visiting, or be or even like just living there. Like I've lived in a few different countries now. You learn so much, and whether that is about I've worked in some countries where LGBTQ plus rights are absolutely nowhere where they should be. I've been to countries where, as the other thing for me as well, like I live with HIV and I'm very open about that.
Mm-hmm.
But some countries I am barred from ever living there. So
Yeah.
it's this real thing about you see so many injustices and how can I, as one person, contribute to even if just a small change? I think experiences those different cultures for me just like really kind of drive me to try and make things better with what I do.
Yeah, and again, thank you for sharing that. I empathize that there are certain cultures where unfortunately they have some practices or regulations that suddenly confined you uh to live who you are, right?
No, totally. And we might talk about this a bit later on. I think one of the bits for me, like actually, strangely, when I finished at Pearson
Mm-hmm,
with you, like, I remember a few people reaching out to me saying, we've been so lucky that we've had a gay leader,
mm-hmm,
and that includes yourself. It's included me, and I don't think. I never went out to kind of openly talk. I just talked about my life and talked
mm-hmm.
about things. And I don't think I realized how much that role modeling helped people who were struggling with their sexuality or hadn't kind of been, out to their family, like almost just to normalize it. And, I was really surprised at the impact that had when I left. And a few people reached out to me and said, look, and I would never have seen that as a thing, if you like, but it's definitely made me want to role model better if that helps people understand how and to live your life that more authentic way, right?
Yeah, so I thank you for confirming that. So I think what I've heard you say is that those experiences, those background, and even your identity and those feedback you receive influence in a way how you connect to people now and the communities, right? Like as you mentioned, you suddenly felt you need to actually role model for these people to also feel empowered. Is that correct?
No, I think it is. And even after that, I reflect so much on that feedback when I left PAC.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, even when I worked at Facebook, which was an incredibly, at the time, inclusive environment, and
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the companies that I felt I could truly be myself. So
Mm-hmm.
I talked very openly about my HIV status. I talked
Mm-hmm.
very openly about my being an LGBTQ leader and things like that. But actually, I was living in Dublin at the time, and a couple of my team were like, "I'm so proud we've got a out role model." And like again, you don't like that label, but if it starts to help people early in their career to think about how they can be their true authentic self, I think that's a really powerful kind of thing for people to see that in the world of work, but also in the world in general, right?
Yeah, indeed, if it's resulting to empowering others and making them more authentic in their lives, I think that's great. Speaking of that, I'll it will probably get personal, Iwan, so pardon. So as you mentioned, as an openly gay professional, were there moments though in your career where you felt authenticity was difficult?
Yeah, like especially early on in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always remember I worked in a very tough logistics and transport organization
Mm-hmm.
before I moved to London. And I always remember I was recruiting with some engineering managers. And I remember at the end, when you're wrapping up the interview, I always remember this manager saying to a person interviewing, "Are you married? You're not one of them, are you?" And it sticks out in my head, and I
Mm.
can remember what office I was in. I can remember it so well, and I remember looking at him going, "I cannot believe you just asked that." One of the most frustrating things for me, I did not challenge that.
Mm.
And maybe it was because I was early on in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was because it was the environment and the way that things were. But I always look back on that moment and go, that should not have happened. And I should have challenged that. Now, obviously, when you become more confident, and I do call it out, there are times, even recently in the last 3, 4 years, people have asked me how my wife is. And I'm like, my husband's really well, thanks. Um, so again, having that confidence and understanding your true values and who you are, don't get me wrong, it is difficult at times. And I think early on in your career, or when you kind of still always finding who you are, it is difficult. But that is one thing now that I will absolutely like my tolerance for that. I will call it out when you do get those stereotypes. You can't be your people aren't respecting you being your true authentic self. And it's definitely been a journey. Like I said, I look back on that moment. God, that must have been what 2006, 7, maybe so a long time ago. It still sticks in my head.
Yeah.
That moment of not challenging that behavior, it really sticks in my head.
What's important though is that although that stick in your head, you've evolved, right? Like you now
Yeah,
are
yeah,
able to
totally.
comfortably call it out and all of that. So probably like what helped you become comfortable about that now?
Um, I think a lot of it, I mean, a lot of it was just like confidence and almost finding like my true values and
Mm-hmm.
my kind of almost red lines of like what I don't tolerate or I will challenge back. And I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think as I've kind of just matured in my kind of leadership and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, I think for me that's really helped. I guess the bit for me, like that, I always say it was a bit of a like a moment for me. And yeah, my time at Facebook was a massive like reflection in terms of my true like authentic leadership and being who I wanted to be and the
Mm-hmm.
role model I wanted to be. And I think I've always been very confident talking about what it's like being an LGBTQ leader and very confident about that. I think the bit with Facebook, because we so valued you being your true self,
Mm-hmm.
like me starting to talk more openly about what it's like living with HIV and why I get involved in the charities and things like that don't define me, but they are a part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think while there's so much stigma in the world around living with HIV, at Facebook, I felt very open to talk to my team about, the challenges, the pressure
Mm-hmm.
that puts me under sometimes to show that it does not affect me. I can still be successful and things like that. And I think that started to really, how do I start to be a true, authentic leader to my core values and my team know where I stand, what I do, like what are my core values. I just think that was a key moment, and that wasn't an awful long time ago, really. What was it back in 2000, so maybe 18,
But
19, when I
yeah.
joined Facebook? Like that was such an important moment for me. Learn like the ethos about being your true authentic self was absolutely like really made me reflect on the where I was from my style and what I thought about things.
Yeah, lovely to hear that. That at least Facebook gave you that reflection and allowed you to actually be the authentic you in that sense,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that helped you become a better leader. From a perspective of life and leadership, though, like, is there any influence from your husband? Like, how has that changed your perspective on life and leadership? You mentioned you're married now for 4 years, probably going five.
Yeah, I mean, what it has done, like, I mean, again, and I don't need to tell you this from seeing how I work. Like, I was addicted to work. Work was my definition, and
Are you?
I
I'm kidding.
literally, all I did was work, work, work.
Yeah.
Whether that was Pearson, Entane,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, every role I ever did, I put 100% into, and that was how I operated.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly at Pearson, like I think I was away, God knows how many days of being away on the road, whether that be in the States or being in Manila or into Poland.
Mm-hmm.
That was what defined me with work. And I guess there was a little bit about, COVID, and then I lost my mum, which was like a huge moment in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met Anthony, and then all of a sudden you start to realize what the priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a couple of moments where, particularly when my mum when we were working out why my mum wasn't well, like I was with my mum and she wasn't well, and I was also on a conference call at the same time. And I
Mm-hmm.
look at that moment and go, God, where are my priorities and what am I doing? And And I think for me, like it definitely makes you reflect about where your priorities are. Don't get me wrong, I still put 100% into my work. But there is a balance now about I also want to spend some time with Anson where we do our date night and go out and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sat on my phone, sat
Mm-hmm.
working. My niece is really good actually because she tends to tell me if I've said, "Oh, spend the day together," and I'm on my phone doing some emails, she'll say, "I thought you weren't working today," and it's just that reminder about being present with the people you're there with, and
Mm-hmm.
work isn't that absolute 100% on all the time, and it's hard. Like I'm wired to be
Be
absolutely working
working.
all the time, and you're almost going through that de-wiring, if you like.
Yes.
One of my colleagues at Facebook, Rachel, we used to talk a lot about this dewiring of how we've been conditioned in the world of
Just
work
work.
and through
Yes.
corporate life. And I think it's really important. I like, and marriage did change that because I actually really value my time with Anthony. I value time with my niece and my sister. It's really important to me that I spend quality time. But there are times, even now, me and my sister will be sat in her kitchen, she's on her laptop, I'm on my laptop, and there's 8 hours gone. And it is making sure you make those changes to get that balance right.
Oh, that's great. And again, it makes me happy that he had at least that influence in your life in that sense. But you mentioned your niece, and one of the things that I've always admired is your close relationship with her. I always see pictures of you and her, and like in some travels also, and all of that. What role? Tell us about her, and what role has being an uncle played in your life?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously we don't have children, but
Mm-hmm.
Olive is such a critical part of our life.
Mm-hmm.
Like we see her as much as we can. The three of us go on holiday together. She's actually was just staying with us last weekend. Like, she's a huge influence on my life. And like say for Anson, like I think it is having that kind of that focus that isn't just work. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, like it like the example I gave you that that challenge back. Why are you on your phone? Why are you
Mm-hmm.
working when you said you weren't working today? Like it's a good reminder, I think,
Mm-hmm.
about she's what like 9 now, and it's like you that constant reminder of like what's important in the world. Like she definitely gives us that, and we have so much fun together. I'm not sure she always sees me as an uncle more than another child, but yeah, it's definitely been a big factor in terms of like, I make sure I will not be away for her birthday. And I know that sounds really simple,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't like that before. I used to miss so many events because I was away with work and this, that, and the other, or I'd cancel things because work, I would need to do this for work. Like again, I think that change in me, like obviously getting married, meeting someone, and the same with having such a wonderful niece like that. That for me is really important. Like I'm up in Manchester seeing her school performance next week, and so excited. But I've been really clear I'm not available that day. This is my priority. But it does take time to make those decisions and learn what's important.
Oh, it's amazing how she or how a child can actually change your perspective in life. So that's great. And I'm always looking forward to seeing your adventures with her.
Yeah, we're just planning where we're going to go on summer holiday. So that's our next planning this week.
Okay, great. Looking back then, what advice would you give your younger self?
Don't to celebrate your successes.
Mm-hmm.
Like that for me, I never did that. I'm probably still don't enough now, but celebrate those wins, celebrate what you've delivered, even if it's not
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like reflect on the effort and the time that you put in and not always strive to do things better. And I think that always puts so much pressure on me to do more and do better and things like that. So I think definitely having that time to reflect on what you've achieved at certain points in your life rather than always chasing the next best thing. Like I from that definitely wish that I knew that when I started out in my career.
Okay. we're probably both wired to just say after accomplishing one, there's no time to celebrate because the
No,
next
exactly. Move on
accomplishment
to the next thing,
should
right?
start to be worked on. So yeah, so but yes, you're right. I mean, take a pause, celebrate even small successes. Shifting gears now, Yuan. So you probably heard that when I launch Identity and Impact, I also talk about some principles which I dearly called Alex principle. And
Yeah.
A stands for aspire, and to me, that's the first principle. So when you first started your career, what did success look like for you?
The title, the position,
Mm-hmm.
the influence, and yeah, that was it. Like the seniority, the impact I could make, that was the key. Like that is what I chased. So yeah, title, position, seniority, like that's what that gave me that. That's why I aspired really to get that more senior role all the time.
Yeah, which is actually normal for all of us. I would probably say that was probably my definition too. At what point then your aspirations begin to evolve beyond career progression?
I think post Facebook for me, like
Mm-hmm.
I was really proud that of what we did there. Um, but what it then moved me into was like, what do I want and what do I start to contribute? And
Mm-hmm.
post Facebook, I started to do a lot more non-exec work. So I did some work for AIDS Map. Then obviously more recently I've done some work for Scar Free Foundation
Mm-hmm.
and Children of the Dump, which I'm just getting involved with, volunteering with the police for custody visits and things like that. And you start to realize you get so much energy from that aspect as well. So I think for me now, it is success is about how am I sharing all the brilliant things that I've been so lucky to achieve and done back to make things better for organizations that wouldn't necessarily have access to that expertise. And I think for me that's what's really changed for me, like how, the roles that I'll take on next will be where I can make an impact and make things much more kind of better for that, whether it's a client or people, not necessarily the seniority within an organization.
Wow, you've really evolved since we first met, right? Like
I know, honestly, and I don't know whether it's because I did take a bit of time out after
Mhm.
Entei to reflect what I want and what I get out of things. So, I'm trying to get this balance of like, almost like 40% like corporate, like consultancy delivery, 40% of the non-exec time and the other 20% giving time back to like charities and volunteering stuff like that's how I'm trying to craft my life. Doesn't always work like that way, and I don't think you have to have it as strict every single time. But it is just making sure you've got those boundaries about where you get your energy and impact. But it is very different to how I was thinking, what, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that your Facebook tenure or experience shifted things for you because like typically many people would spend years climbing the ladders, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Only
yeah.
to realize that they've actually never stopped to ask why they were climbing. But for you, after Facebook, as you've said, it shifted things.
Yeah, and I think it did like so I got like when I got like my promotion at Facebook, I was going to be really happy, like senior director, really happy. And then all of a sudden, it's like, right, what do I now need to
Mm-hmm.
do to get to the VP level? And I thought, actually, I'm so happy with what I've achieved here. Like, what is that drive to get that next level?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, getting that level at Facebook's like a real challenge. Like, it's a massive role, and I think for me, it was that reflection. Then you just look back and, maybe some of those prompts and reflection does change how you think. But it was definitely, when I think about how much it's definitely during COVID, so like the late nights and global role from London, you
Mm-hmm.
suddenly realize how many hours you've put in. And, it does make you reflect on priorities.
Yeah, so many people think legacy is something we leave behind at the end of our lives, right? But often legacy is actually happening in real time through the people we influence.